Good evening, friends. It's Facebook time again, and I, Colonel Sandeep Karunakaran, am back again with a new topic. This topic is again a very close topic to my heart. And today we'll be talking about the evolution of embryology and its importance in this entire field of IVF, that is, in vitro fertilization. Well, a lot of people ask me which is more important. Is it the clinical side or the embryology side which does the trick? Well, it is like asking me which wheel of the bicycle is more important, which rail, track, either left or the right, is more important for the train. Both are equally important. But somehow, it's the clinical part which gains a lot of importance. Actually, the embryology side also is as important, and is important, can never be underestimated. A pristine lab is a must for any successful IVF program. So, as patients, when you go on to a lab, it is not just the clinician that you have to look at. It's also as important to know what your lab is like. Who is the embryologist? Are they permanently posted there? Or is it someone who comes just for your case and leaves the next day morning? Comes just for your embryo transfer and leaves? Well, that's not right. We need both the clinical team and the embryology team to be working together in tandem. I, for a slight exception, have been doing both the clinical part and embryology part for the past decade or so. And it gives me immense pleasure to actually balance these two aspects of the fulcrum. I mean, it is a unique experience to actually see rather, see under the microscope what you see on the ultrasound screen, how the follicles transform into babies. So, a very hidden part of the entire IVF program, that is embryology, is a path breaker. I mean, it is actually a game changer in the entire success of your clinic per se. The advent of embryology, the thought of embryology is not new. It's almost a century old. In 1932, actually, in a book called The Brave New World, the author being Huxley, Aldous Huxley, actually, he first speaks about the possibility of growing babies in a laboratory. 2 years later, in 1934, a person by the name of Pincus in Germany actually raised the possibility that embryos can be grown outside the body. Later, it took a bit of thought process, evolution, and in around 1960, it was Palmer from France who retrieved human oocytes with the help of a laparoscope. The culture method slowly improved, and a lot of veterinary doctrine was going on into the field of IVF, where they used to freeze semen and grow embryos, freeze embryos. Slowly, the human adaptation started, and in 1973, it was the Australian pair of Carl Wood and John Leeton who actually got the first IVF pregnancy. But unfortunately, it didn't result in a delivery. We had to wait 5 more years till 1978, when Bob Edwards and Patrick Steptoe got together to make the first child of IVF, that is Louis Brown. From there was never ever looking back. A lot of things have changed over the past 4 decades. One of the main things which has changed is the incubators. Well, for the less aware, incubator is the place where we culture our embryos. It is the artificial womb or the initial womb for these growing embryos. We try to mimic the environment which is there in the uterus in the incubator. Incubators initially were inverted glass domes which used to be kept in the lab. Just to the glass domes were to give it a certain temperature, humidity, and possibly carbon dioxide. Slowly, these glass domes disappeared, and box type, big cupboard-like incubators came into being. These were slowly replaced by something which we call as benchtop or a desktop incubator. And these helped us better recover the temperature and the carbon dioxide. Slowly, should we pull out the embryo repeatedly to see it? That thought process gave rise to something called as the time-lapse incubation. Time-lapse incubation is an incubator which has a camera fitted, and we could monitor the growth of the embryo without actually pulling the embryo out of the incubator. Initial time-lapse incubators used to be non-humidified or dry incubators, and now we also have a humidified time-lapse incubator. Possibly, this is what is the state of the art in terms of incubation. We can almost, if not exactly, mimic the culture conditions or the uterine conditions in culture situation. Another thing which has changed drastically over the period of years is the culture media. Culture media is the fluid in which we grow our embryos. Now, this media has not only to give the energy, which can be from chemicals like pyruvate and glucose, but it has to also give amino acids, certain minerals, water, salts. A lot of things are provided by this culture media. The initial culture media used to be very, very simple, and they were single step medias, which slowly gave way to complex medias called the sequential media, wherein we had to change the media as per the day of culture. Now, again, with time lapse incubation coming in, the possibility of changing media doesn't exist. So, we are back to again single step media, but with a lot of improvement. A lot of chemicals are added, a lot of growth factors are added, a lot of chemicals like hyaluronic acid find their way into the media, which help better implantation, better growth, and this actually gives a lot of strength to the media, strength to the embryo rather, to make it a better embryo, a more viable embryo, an embryo with more cells, which will produce a better baby. Another thing which has undergone a lot of change is the disposables rather. Initially, we used to culture the babies or the embryos in glassware. We had glass petri dishes. Everything was made of glass, and hence the name in vitro fertilization. That is fertilization in glass. From glassware, we have slowly graduated to plasticware. Initial plasticware was the same ones which we used for lab culture, but now we have non-embryotoxic plasticware. Plasticware where in the plastics don't affect in any way the growth, the potency of the embryo per se. This has given us a lot of courage to keep the embryos for longer time. Otherwise, we were always worried about the fact that is the plastics causing any harm to the child. Another very important thing which has changed is pipettes and the other small micro manipulators and things like that. I mean, the injection pipettes and the small things which used to be made within the lab. Now we have companies making it. We have standardized machines making it. So we have a uniformity in shape, in size, in structure, and in function. It's given us embryologists a lot of comfort while working in the lab, because if you're picking up a small denudation pipette, the first time, the second time, or it may be the 100th or even the 1,000th time, it is going to be the same. Whereas earlier, when it used to be lab made or it used to be made by self, it used to change at every pull of the glass tubing. And there are a lot of changes also in terms of sperm selection. Initially, we had something called as conventional IVF, wherein we could just put sperms in and around the oocyte and expect that they would fertilize them. But today, things have changed. In 1990s, we had something come up called intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Here, the oocyte is held with the help of a very fine pipette, and one sperm, believe it or not, one single sperm is picked up by the embryologist and injected into the oocyte. Imagine the finesse that is required. And this small procedure, or rather this changing in the procedure, has drastically improved our fertilization rates. We can now be very confident that the embryo is definitely going to be fertilized. Also, what has changed is the magnification. From 20x, we have moved to 200x to 400x. And now we have something called the IMSI, that is intracytoplasmic morphologically selected sperm injection, wherein you magnify the sperm to around 6,000 to 7,000 times, depending on your microscope that you have. You can see the inner structures of the sperm head, choose the correct sperm, and inject it. Many other such innovations have come up over the period of time. And one of those is the process of sperm concentration. Medias of sperm concentration have changed. From simple swim-up medias, we have moved into density gradient medias, which can differentiate the better sperm from not so good sperms. Also, we have things like physiologically selected sperms for ICSI, that's PICSI, and also microfluidics, which makes use of fine channels to select sperms which may have better motility, and we hope to get better outcome by using these sperms selected through microfluidics. Another very important thing is prevention of diseases. I mean, embryology today can give you the perfect embryo. If a person is suffering from a disease which is transmitted, for example, thalassemia, Huntington's chorea, it could be any of these diseases, and you know that this is genetically transmitted, we can do IVF. The embryologist cultures the embryo for about 5 days, picks up a part of the outer this bunch of cells called the trophectoderm. These cells are analyzed with the help of next-gen sequencing, and the lab can tell you exactly whether the resultant embryo is going to have the same disease as the father or mother. The patient, the parents, can look forward to a healthy offspring. It is such a wonderful turn of events for the parents who don't have to actually undergo an abortion just because their biopsy or the amniocentesis gave a wrong result or the undesirable result. It's given us a lot of satisfaction in treatment. It's improved our time to pregnancy also. There are 3 types of these procedures, as we call them, that is PGT, that is pre-implantation genetic testing. It can be done for aneuploidies. It can be done for structural rearrangements. These are rearrangements in chromosome which actually causes a lot of miscarriages or abortions. Or it can be used to detect monogenic disorders. Also, it can be used for HLA typing also, but that is a bit controversial. Embryology is growing by leaps and bounds, and the future is ever so bright for embryology. In fact, I feel that embryology is going to be the stepping stone for the medicine of the future. I bet all of you have heard about something called as the 3-parent IVF. This is mitochondrial transfer. So you have an embryo where the chromosomes are given by the pair, the husband and the wife or the partners, and the mitochondria is given by a third lady. This can treat mitochondrial diseases. Also, it can help rejuvenate the oocytes. It provides more energy for the oocytes to divide further into better embryos. Also, what is coming up in the future is a lot of gene editing or gene engineering, as a lot of people like to call it. This is done with the help of enzymes called CRISPR-Cas, and you can actually cut off a part of the DNA and replace it with healthy DNA. You can remove part. I mean, of course, it is still not very ethically approved because we are almost knocking at the fringes of ethnicity or ethical issues as far as this is concerned. Another important thing which embryology can lead us to is stem cells. Either it could be induced pluripotency or embryonic stem cells. This can provide a real stem cells which is HLA compatible. That is, a person, if is injected with these stem cells, will not react against it, which is a big issue when it comes to transplant and things like that. Embryology, from glass domes, open labs, we have moved into absolutely sophisticated laboratories. in modular OTs and modular labs, state of the art equipment. Equipments have improved so many times over the past, even last decade that I've been practicing IVF. Things have changed so much. It has a wonderful future ahead. And as patients, whenever you knock the doors of any IVF clinic, remember it is not only your clinician who does the job, but there is an embryologist standing strongly behind all the clinician who does the hard work in the lab. Make sure you do say a thank you to the embryologist whenever you get a positive result. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a patient hearing session. Well, one of the questions which has come across to me is who can become embryologist? Uh, well, actually, anyone can, because in India there are no strict guidelines as to who can become an embryologist. But yes, it is always prudent that the person who chooses embryology has a sound science backing. At least postgraduate or MSc is a desired degree. But I think a lot of doctors nowadays have taken up the challenge to become embryologists. And I mean, it's nothing against the science graduates, but I feel a doctor can become a better embryologist because he understands the physiology of human nature or human beings much better than others just by the basis of their education. So I think all of us who have done science needs to look at embryology as an option for them in future. One of the next questions which has come is, does embryologist play a crucial role in IVF success? Of course he does. I mean, there is no doubt about it. The clinician can only improve the quality of the gametes to a certain level. To maintain the quality of the gametes during the process of culture is the job of the embryologist. He determines how good the embryo is going to be. He decides his actions, his speed, his finesse, decides how good your embryo is going to be on the day of transfer and how well are your success rates going to be. We'll go on to the next question. Can we ask for a lab visit before opting for IVF treatment? Some of the labs do allow this thing, or it could be a virtual tour. I think the best thing today is to do a virtual tour wherein most of us do help understand what is the inside of a lab with the help of a pre-recorded film or one of the small video clips that we could give it to you. But visiting a lab is a bit of an option because the air culture, the quality of air, the amount of VOCs. I mean, VOCs are chemicals which are secreted, by the body. A lot of these things do come in when anyone enters the lab. So going into the lab might not be a very sound option, but yes, a virtual tour is always an option. We'll go on to the next question. Must we ask about the embryology lab? Of course, you must ask about who is the embryologist. Is he temporary? Is he permanent? How many people are working in the lab? What is his qualification? What are the success rates? What is the blastulation rate? What is the fertilization? And there are so many parameters that you need to check before actually choosing which hospital to go to. So I guess the embryology lab needs to be understood by the patient before you actually embark on the journey of IVF, because the journey of IVF as such is not very easy and you want the best treatment to come across to you. So do inquire about who your embryologist is and who is going to look after your embryos for those 5 crucial days that the embryos are going to be in the lab. Is MBBS required for an embryologist? Well, not exactly. Any science graduate or a postgraduate would be qualified enough to become an embryologist. MBBS, of course, is always a feather in the cap, and we encourage people who have done medicine to come to embryology because we feel that a lot of research is going into embryology nowadays, and we want a lot of people with research bent of mind to come in. Plus, as I've already said, understanding the human physiology might be slightly more easier for a doctor rather than MSc. It's not that there's nothing against MSc, because I have learned my embryology from a lot of these MSc people who are excellent. They are the people who started all these things. In fact, One of the first embryologists I met was from the veterinary side. So it's all a science. It's how we adapt and how one can actually take this science forward. So MBBS is a feather in the cap, but any science graduate or postgraduate can definitely do it. Can patients meet up with the embryologist? I guess they should. They should, because an embryologist, a good embryologist, will give you a lot of confidence. It's not only the clinical, he can talk about a lot of things. You should know what method of culture is used. I guess all patients should meet the embryologist, and when the box of sweets is distributed, make sure you share a box with the embryologist also, because he's also put in a lot of hard work. He's like the engine driver, who puts coal into the engine, like the erstwhile coal trains that we had. He's the one who gets his hand dirty, stands by the fire and puts the coal in. The clinician is just behind the scene at times. But yeah, both the things are like, two wheels of a bicycle, as I said, two rails of a railway track. Both are equally important. You should meet your embryologist. We'll go on to the next question. How many embryologists does a IVF center have? It depends on how much cases you're doing. And I feel any IVF center with a good standing should have a person who is looking after not only his embryos, but his equipment as well, throughout the day, throughout the year, and without a break. All these equipments are very, very sensitive and require a lot of tender loving care. And how many is absolutely dependent upon the number of cases that you do. The minimum, of course, is one. There is no zero embryologist in an IVF center. So, and if as the cases increases, we have to increase the number of embryologists. It could be at different levels, depending on how many cases you have. Different levels means it could be a person who's senior enough, or it could be a mid-level or a junior person, depending on the cases. Another question: future as embryologist. I have actually touched upon this. The embryology has wonderful future. I think the next big thing in medicine is going to be embryology, because embryology is going to be a stepping stone for gene therapy. That is one. Also, stem cell therapy, which is going to definitely come in a big way in the future. The basis is micromanipulation, which is a unseparable part of embryology per se. A lot of future, a lot of good things for embryology and embryologists to come. Let's go on to the next question. Okay, thank you, Sushma ma'am. It's always a pleasure. I guess the questions are over, but anyway, before I close the session, I would like to thank all of you for actually listening on to me. And needless to say, if at all you have any question, do post it, and I'll be happy to answer them whenever I get the time, or I will do it as and when it is notified to me. Thanks a lot. And as I said, both clinicians as well as embryologists are equal partners in your success. Please give adequate importance to choosing your IVF lab also when you choose your clinician. Thank you and have a great day.